So welcome everybody. My name's Paul Lloyd, so I'm the chair of the Uas Challenge Committee as part of the organising committee for this event. So as ever, it's fantastic to see it's such a wide range of people. So I'd say good morning. I suspect it's good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. I'm conscious that again this year has been exceptionally challenging for all of us. As COVID has continued to cause challenges for all of us to move forward. But nevertheless, we've continued to adapt to that, like all good engineers. We've adapted to the changes put in front of us, and we've therefore been able to offer, a virtual and a live competition. Conscious that COVID restrictions do limit some abilities. So, we'll just get the next slide, please. So this morning's webinar is really your opportunity to understand more about both sides of the competition. We've broken it down, as you can see there, both into the virtual and then the live. So we'll cover both aspects, and I've got the organising committee key people that will introduce their aspects. I'll let them introduce themselves as they come on. So that's probably the best way of doing it. We've got a Q&A session at the end. As ever, I'd ask that you put your questions in the sidebar, and we can pick those up as we go through, and probably pick them up all at the end if we can, because you may well find that some of your questions that are asked may well be answered by somebody as we go through it, but we'll try and do that. As ever, if we're unable to answer that, we'll look to get back to you with those answers if we need to. And again, this session will be available offline, online afterwards for you to be able to watch. So this is your opportunity. Please listen in, ask your questions about both aspects of the challenge, both the virtual and live. And I'm very much looking forward to virtually seeing some of you, and maybe possibly actually seeing some of you at Buckminster later in a couple of months' time. So now I'll hand over to it's Christina to do the first introduction. Over. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. So as Paul introduced, I'm Christina, and I'm the project manager for the Uas Challenge. I understand where you're all coming from. 5 years ago, I actually did the challenge myself as a student, and then I've joined the committee afterwards just because I can't let it go. So we'll go through the virtual challenge, which we put together for you this year. Due to the COVID restrictions, we understand that not everyone can travel. So we wanted to give you something that you can actually do as an alternative to the flight test event. So we'll start with the key dates and deliverables. We've got the X-plane model, which is due on the 28th of May. There is a penalty for late delivery, so it needs to be in by that date. We've got the A0 poster due the 7th of June 2021. The Dragon's Den video, the 7th of June 2021, with a late delivery penalty also. And then if they're required, we'll do a series of Dragon's Den interviews on the 14th to 16th of June, and we'll arrange that with the teams. But again, that's only if we require it. And then we've got the award ceremony, 18th of June 21. All team submissions must be uploaded to the Mushroom platform by these dates. And next slide. So I know you've all been very curious about what a bit more guidance on the X-plane model. So as we said, X-plane 10 model, or X-plane 11 if you've spoken to us separately and put that question to us. There are a few details that we just want to get to give you before you start doing that. The payload should be classified as a water payload. This will now allow us to do the virtual competition as like for like as the real flight test event. What my team will be doing is actually designing the scenery package for X-plane to run the flight test event as close to the real thing. So the scenario will actually be at Buckminster, exactly like we're doing the flight test event around the same course. So it should give you as close to the real thing as possible. Teams will be responsible for setting their maximum takeoff weight and payload weight. So this is something that you can do within the weight and balance section of X-plane. You need to fill them in as if you would on your real aircraft and what you've submitted based on your design reports as well. But these need to be pre-inputted so that we know what we're flying. If you put a maximum payload weight in and your aircraft does not take off with that weight, that's what we will fly. So you need to make sure that they're correct and do some test flights yourself to make sure you can handle that payload with an X-plane. What we require for submission is a single file that contains the ACF, which is the aircraft frame file, objects and textures. So the more items that you put on, you'll have more subfolders. So if you put airfoil data in, you'll have an airfoil photo file, sorry. If you want to put a design on your aircraft, which you certainly can do, and paint it all sorts of funny colors, put logos on, again, you can do. They're called textures. So you'll have a subfolder of textures and object files as well. So depending on how detailed you go on your aircraft, you will have more and more subfolders. Make sure that when you send us your file, and it should be a compressed zip file submitted through Mushroom, that you contain all them subfolders. When you come to name your file, the zip file, make sure you put your university name and your team name so that we know who it is. If we don't know who it is, it can get mixed up with somebody else. We've got quite a few submissions coming in. Do not amend any files in the zip folder. If you change any of their names, it will not load. You need to only change the zip folder name itself, none of them subfolders. I'd recommend that you check that your aircraft can load into X-Plane using this method. So save it, zip file it, and then import it into your own X-Plane to make sure that it all loads correctly. If it doesn't load for you, it won't load for us. The earlier you can submit your X-Plane model, great. We'll start testing as soon as we get them to make sure that we can load in. If there's any issues, we'll contact you if we've got time. So it's obviously important to check that process as soon as possible. One thing I will mention, don't use any of the preloaded X-Plane models within X-Plane. We will be able to tell if you've just edited them, so please don't do that. And then when you're creating your X-Plane model, make sure you create a folder which you can easily get access to. It's quite easy to lose what you've saved in X-Plane. So they're just a few words of caution for that. What I will be doing is sending out some guidance just in A4 sides on a bit more detail on what I've said here today with a couple of screenshots, just how to save it and what we expect in that submission. So hopefully that should provide you with a bit of guidance. And for any of you that are new to X-Plane, I will recommend using the X-Plane user guide. So Plane Maker is what you'll be using to create your aircraft. There is an excellent guide for both version 10 and version 11, which have very few differences. That's available on Google. First, if you just type in X-Plane Plane Maker user guide, it's the first link that comes up. And that gives you a step-by-step instruction on how to build from start to finish and the types of data that you can input as well. So I would recommend having a look at that. Next slide. So X-Plane mission scoring. So you'll see the scoring here, 340 points. We've tried to keep it as similar to the live event as possible. X-Plane does have some limitations, so we've had to tweak it slightly, but this should allow you to have the full experience of them trials. So Takeoff has been given 40 points, Payload and Carriage and Delivery 100, Efficiency 40, Climb and Glide 40, Navigation 40, Landing 40. And then the Speed Challenge also 40 points. There'll be 2 points deducted for each second over 10 minutes, and the mission score will be best over 2 attempts. Understanding, they are slightly different to the real flight event, but we've tried to give you them as much as the capability as possible as doing the live event. So that climbing guide, the navigation efficiency, speed challenge, we've managed to be able to make sure that it can give you all that as well and give you some feedback on that. Next, please. So the A0 poster, the purpose of it is to summarise your design, development and manufacturing testing on a single page. The poster should illustrate your design, development, manufacturing and testing achievements, highlight innovations in your design and how you've addressed safety and how you've addressed the environmental impact of your UAS. It should be a summary of all your design work and the key points that you want to make sure that we are aware of. And next, please. A Dragon's Den presentation. The purpose of that is to present your project to potential investors covering your business plan, STEM engagement and environmental issues. It should be a maximum of 15 minutes and a video covering your revenue model, sales projections and how your UAS meets the customer requirements, how you have promoted the competition and your design with schools, the media and on social media, and how you've minimized the environmental impact of your design and operation. So this video can be done any way you want, whether it wants to be a Microsoft PowerPoint video or you want to get a bit more creative or you're really high tech and you want to submit something that way. That is fine as long as it meets those requirements. Next slide, please. in the Uas Challenge Awards. So here's what we've got for the virtual challenge. So some of them are, again, different to the flight test. So we've got a grand champion, runner-up, third place, and highest place in new entrants. So obviously that's for new entrants only. The activity and how they're scored across that. So we've got the design review, which is worth 15 points. Your design report, which is worth 140 points. Design review 2, 15 points. Manufacturing support and test report, 90. And the X-Plane mission we've just spoke about is worth 340. So that takes you a total of 600 points, which should be the same amount of points awarded to the flight test. And then we've also got a series of additional awards: innovation, design, safety, environmental, business proposition, media and engagement, most promise. So you can see there how we're going to judge them and where they're going to be judged. So business and media engagement will be judged on that video presentation from the Dragon's Den. Environmental will be from the reports and the climb and glide score, which we'll be doing in X-Plane. Most promise, judges' discretion, and innovation and design will be the support you've already submitted. Note of them: design, business proposition, media and engagement, they'll be joint with live. So they will all be judged at the same. It won't be separate for the virtual and real flight test and the real fly-off event. So it'll be one award overall. Okay, and next slide. Yep, so that takes us to the Q&A session. So if anyone has any questions on the X-Plane challenge, please feel free to ask them and put them in the chat box, and I think it's Elaine, you'll be reading through them.
I will be. There's none yet, so don't be shy.
We'll wait for a second then, shall we? Christine, you did such a perfect job that nobody has any questions. That's what it is, you see.
Oh, I hope so. No, we've got one. Can X-Plane support quadcopters and VTOL? It can. Yeah. So I built quadcopters myself in there. It does work, and it's tricky, but it's all a learning experience. And this is what the idea was: to give you something else to do if you can't make the live event. It can support virtual takeoff and landing. Thankfully, we've got a couple of pilots that are flying them. I know it's extremely difficult to do virtual takeoff, but it can be. How are we judging our optional tasks through X-Plane simulation? If you submit to us, we will see what your optional tasks are, and we will do that assessment on what we can and can't judge. Is the video and the A0 poster also to be uploaded to Mushroom and in the named folders? Helena, Christina, do you have an answer to that one? I assume so.
Yes, all of the deliverables need to be uploaded on the Mushroom platform.
No computer vision in the virtual challenge. I assume you mean, I'm not quite sure what that question means. We will be creating videos of the fly-off. What we will be having done is 2 experienced pilots who fly in X-Plane and Flight Simulator. They will be flying them, and we'll be creating videos of them. So it's certainly something we can look at, allowing you to see them videos of how your aircraft actually fly. No, so are the teams expected to buy X-Plane? X-Plane PlaneMaker is free in version 10 and 11, and you can use X-Plane for free as well to build these aircraft. We have got licensed X-Plane for the commercial use, so we can actually run the competition and create that scenery for you. But for the actual X-Plane model, you don't need to buy X-Plane. You can fly it. I think the only limitation in using the X-Plane without buying it is you can only fly for 10 minutes, which is enough to test your aircraft and to test each of them aspects. We will not be giving you the fly-off event and the scenery. So you can't test yourself on the course, so you shouldn't need more than 10 minutes to do that. When will we receive further details on the Dragon's Den presentation for the online event, or is it the only information that we receive? Helena, Christina, is there any more further information to come out for the Dragon's Den presentation?
Well, I think you have the dates, so you know roughly when to expect it, and we will schedule in all of the meetings and presentations in due course.
Yeah, but I think at the moment, what what we've said there that needs to be covered, and the rest is up to you, really. Will recognizing ground markers still be an optional task for the version event? No, so there won't be the image recognition event. Unfortunately, that's not a part that X-Plane can do. So there won't be the target recognition. It will be manual dropping of the payload, and our pilots will do that. As long as you have the inbuilt function, which is something you need to make sure that your aircraft can do, we can't add it in later, you need to put it within your X-Plane model, is the ability to carry a payload and what weight of that payload. No, so you can't import the CAD model directly into X-Plane, unfortunately. So it doesn't need to be a highly detailed. It should, all the information that you should have for your X-Plane model should all be contained within your design report. You're looking at airfoil data, information on your motors, propellers, energy consumption. It should all be information you already have, plugging into boxes within, I think it's 12 categories within X-Plane. There'll be some tweaking to it, but from myself, using that X-Plane guide, I can build one in about 2 weeks. Obviously, for yourself, fixing some issues and learning how to use X-Plane, it may take you some time, but if you can split that, you can split those sections about that building with your teammates as well. So someone can build in the weight and balance, which is all the details on your C of G, how much your takeoff weight, your landing weight, all that information in there, and that's one section done. So there's quite a lot of information you can input, but as long as it looks like the submission, what you've said, it will be in the design report, and the main parameters are the same. So don't go changing your airfoils because you realize they don't work or you can't get them into X-Plane. Try and make them as like for like as possible, and we'll look into that information that you've put in to make sure that they are what you've said in your design report. Yes, the X-Plane will be flown manually during the virtual event. We've got 2 experienced pilots that will be flying them, and they will do 2 full flights of them. But obviously, we've put a little bit of time there to get them working and make sure that everything's working within them before we start. Will the X-Plane simulations run by the judges will be broadcast for the teams, or will you just update us about the planes? So it's saying what we plan to do is actually record them via video. So if it's something that the teams are interested, we can certainly look at whether we can share them with you so you can see how your aircraft performed.
Yeah, I guess we'll try and also find a way. It'd be good, wouldn't we, if we could share the videos afterwards? But we'll just have to see about how that works.
Yeah, if I can get them up to Mushroom and within the size constraints, that would be perfect. So I'll look at a way of formatting them so you can see them. Unfortunately, at the actual award ceremony, we would have to be very cautious in terms of bandwidth. I've tried to do it with the US committee before, and we just see a stationary picture. Due to the quality of the videos, it doesn't like it over the internet, unfortunately. So I wouldn't want to just give you that and then you can't see anything. For multicopters, X-Plane have flight control software built in? Yes, it does.
Give it another minute or so for any other questions coming. As I said, if you're as ever with these things, you'll sort of go away, think about it. If you've got any other questions, you can fire them in, and we'll answer them as best we can. Again, if you have any questions as we go through the other presentations on the virtual event, please fire them in, and again we can come back and answer them. Clearly, if we can get them answered here, then it'll be better. One more. I think
any font that you want to use for the A0 poster, just
not Comic Sans Serif.
Or the Joker font that you can't read. Yeah, just it's readable. Think about an A0 poster. Again, in terms of size, make sure you can read it. If you're looking at an A0 poster and you put that on a wall, you want to be able to read it from around 6 feet away and at least notice what's on there. You don't want it to be blurred lines.
Yeah, this is not one of your university assignments written on an A0 piece of paper, please, because people need to be able to read it. It's about the presentation, and it's about what it looks like as well. So think about you're portraying your information to somebody walking past, sort of senior people working past, looking at your poster, who need to get it, need to grab your attention, need to get that information quickly. So please think about that, about how you get the important information across, not necessarily everything across, but it's to grab people's attention. So please look at that. Again, just give it another minute for people. Good. Okay. Great.
Compulsory requirements of the Dragon's Den video. So I think the key points are what we said there on the slide. You must discuss the environmental impact, all your sponsorship, the media outreach, and them aspects. If you would like any more information, Elena, Christina, I didn't think we planned on sending anything else out, but we can certainly look at it and see if a bit more information is required.
We'll probably, when Lambert, when you do your bit, I suspect you might, if you wanted to come on this one at all, from the judge's perspective, do you have any particular comments on about those Dragon's Den at all?
I think it's covered in the rules, and that's the same as we've done in previous years. And so, I mean, it's about selling your concept to customers, emergency aid customers, and but in addition to that, with the A0 poster and the Dragon's Den presentation, we're trying to understand a bit about your media and engagement, again, how you're putting your design across to people, and so I don't think there's anything more we can say. It's up to you to be imaginative and just try and get the stuff across as concisely as possible.
Thanks.
Got one more question. Does X-Plane allow for simulations of tailless aircrafts too? So tail is one of them 12 categories or 12 tabs of information you can put in. You can leave that blank if you don't want a tail on your aircraft. It's entirely up to you, and you'll see whether it flies or not.
Yeah. Cool.
It's
Excellent.
Always an interesting experience. Yeah,
it is. Will indeed. It will indeed. So great, Christina. That's great. Thank you very much, and that was really clear. Some questions. Again, as we said, if you've got any other questions that come, just quickly one there. Do you want to do that one? Then we'll need to move on, Christina.
Yeah. So does X-Plane support proper mass distribution of different aircraft components? So it does support mass distribution, and you can set your mass of different areas of your aircraft. Obviously, it doesn't go down to a component level. It's not that detailed, but you can set certain weights within certain areas, and there are some limitations set. So I'd recommend having a look in X-Plane and seeing how you can distribute the weight according to the X-Plane parameters. Again, if you've got any questions going forward, you can submit them to us and we'll have a look at it. Just don't submit questions the day before the X-Plane model's due, because that will happen, and I won't be able to answer all of them in time because I will have to go play with X-Plane myself to figure out some of them.
Cool, good stuff. Okay. Right. Okay. I think we sort of need to move on. There's the odd questions are coming through. I think, Christy, if you're able to maybe answer them in the side tab, we'll see how that goes. And if not, if it's a longer answer, then we can always come back and pick it up if you need to. So I think next we'll move on to the live competition. Again, conscious of code restrictions, we are planning to do that. So Yelena will just start off with some of the travel and accommodation, and hand over to the rest of the team. Yelena.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Yelena Gatusha. I'm the IMechE Education Programme Operations Manager, and I'm responsible for 4 of our 5 student challenges, including the Uas Challenge. I'm going to provide you with a very brief overview of travel and accommodation. I'm going to be on site to welcome you at the competition and to provide assistance throughout the event. The 2021 Uas Challenge will be taking place at the British Model Flying Association, the BMFA in Buckminster. The event was previously held in Snowdonia in Wales, and this is the first year we are using the BMFA site. The venue meets our flying needs and site requirements, is geographically more accessible and has good connections with the rest of the country. The address is provided on this slide, as are directions which you may find useful. Next slide, please. It is important for me to highlight at this point that it is each team's own responsibility to arrange and cover any costs associated with your accommodation. The IMechE will be providing camping facilities at the BMFA site, which are free of charge from the 13th to the 16th of July inclusive. At the site, there will be toilets, showers, changing bays, which are intended for your use should you wish to camp. It is worthwhile noting here, and international teams, I'm directing this mainly at you, that English weather can be unpredictable, and although it is summertime, it is important that you come prepared for rain, wind, hail, and carefully consider your equipment if camping. For participants who do not wish to camp on site, there are numerous accommodation options in Grantham and Melton Mowbray, which are the nearest towns. And we recommend that you take a look at Airbnb and booking.com for further information. We will be issuing some more details with regard to COVID restrictions and what we need to do. As these are constantly changing, this will be prior to the event. And hopefully, if the UK roadmap keeps on progressing, there won't be too many strict restrictions. But of course, we want to minimize risk and have a safe competition for everybody involved. So we will issue further instructions closer to the time. Now, I would like to pass on to Martin Salto, who will cover safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Yelena. Martin Salto, just to introduce myself, I'm an aerospace engineer. I lead the space business with a consultancy called Fraser Nash, and I've been responsible for the rules for the Uas Challenge since the start. I'm just going to talk you through the logistics for the demonstration event, the 3 days, and really the importance of this is so that everybody knows what to expect, what to do, where to be, and so that we can maintain a really good tempo of operations and flying, maximize the flying, do that all safely, and have a lot of fun and avoid too much hanging around. So the first day is very much set up. It's really important that everyone is on site by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Get settled in, set up your pit area with your aircraft and your support equipment, and then there'll be a team safety briefing for everyone, which is mandatory at 6 o'clock. And a little bit more about that on the safety aspects later. There'll also be the opportunity to get into the scrutineering. Rod Williams will be talking about that a little later, but the scrutineering is and the flying is done on a kind of first come first serviced queue. So the earlier you can get your aircraft into scrutineering, passed and approved, ready to fly, then you'll be forward in the queue and ready to go on the next day. Next slide, please. So day 2, we'll start events promptly at 8 o'clock. Those who have been scrutineered successfully on day 1 will go into the queue for flying. We're going to have 2 flying lanes, so some parallel flying activities to maintain the tempo. For those who haven't yet scrutinized, had their aircraft scrutineered, go into the queue for the scrutineering and get that done. And the day will be a busy day of scrutineering and flying. Hopefully we get as much flying done as possible. Next slide, please. And then day 3, again, we'll start at 8 o'clock in the morning. I should have said the day 2, I think we finish around 7 o'clock in the evening. We'll kick off again on day 3 at 8 o'clock in the morning. Again, some aircraft will have problems. You might need to do modifications, in which case you need to re-go through the scrutineering. We'll complete all the flying, and hopefully we'll make sure that everyone, if possible, has at least 2 flying attempts, and maybe more if the 2 parallel flight lines go well and that everybody is efficient. Very much depends on all of you guys being really efficient and getting through the scrutineering and the flying quickly. And then we'll wrap up and we'll have an award ceremony at 7 o'clock to give out the prizes. Next slide, please. So safety is important, and obviously reflecting it's important. We have a prize for safety, and there's a couple of aspects to this. There's obviously the aviation safety and the personal health and safety. So aviation is safe because we have established regulations and best practice, and right through the design, development and operating life cycle, and we've tried to give you an insight into that, into these processes through the rules, and you've all addressed those with your aircraft designs and so forth, and that will continue through the demonstration event, and scrutineering and approval of the fitness for flight is a key part of that. The other aspect is the safety culture, and we'll be very much looking at the team's behaviour during the event, and it's all part of the assessment of which supports the kind of assessment and prize giving for the safety prize. A couple of points to note: obviously mandatory to attend the safety briefings, and please, you must always comply with the instructions from the safety officer on site. So with regard to COVID and so forth, the UK is in a good place with the vaccination program's going really well. So we hope and expect that all of the current restrictions will have been lifted well before the Uas Challenge demonstration event. However, we'll brief you obviously at the start of on day one what the government guidelines are, and I think probably all we need to say is we must all adhere to any government guidelines at that stage. And I think probably the other thing is that, you know, we need to be respectful of some people will feel more cautious than others about, you know, mixing it in at a large event with lots of people. So I think it's just common respect and consideration. Some people will be still a little cautious, and others may not be. And that, I think, is all I had to say, and I'd like to just hand over to Lambert Dopping-Heppenstall, who's the head judge.
Right, hello everybody. Yes, I'm Lambert, and I head up the team of the 12 judges we have for the competition. So the key dates and deliverables, rather like for the virtual competition, except these dates are slightly later on as we've moved back the event itself into July. And so the first thing you're going to be delivering to us, or the next thing you're going to be delivering to us, is the flight readiness review, which is a really important step on the 25th of June. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, and Rod Williams, the chief scrutineer, will talk also about that later on. But I think with all of these items, one important thing to come across, and it's just the same for the virtual competition, is that you must deliver these things on time, and please follow the instructions. It's very difficult to give you points for things that you haven't told us about, that we've asked you to. But even if you don't agree with what we're asking for, the customer has to be considered as being right, and there is a reason why we've asked for the information. And so please follow instructions, deliver on time, as it's a good introduction. When you get into the big wide world of industry later on, you'll find this becomes really important. So flight readiness review, then the A0 poster, and as Paul has described that, and we would ask you to bring an actual A0 poster along to the competition. It's to the fly-off event as well as putting it up on Meshoom on the 2nd of July. The Dragon's Den presentation, it's exactly the same as Christina has described for the virtual event. For you attending the live event is on the 2nd of July. I might just mention the fact that some of you are sort of doing the dual thing, particularly overseas teams who are uncertain at the moment whether you'll be able to attend the live event, are also submitting for the virtual event in case you can't attend. And so you don't have to resubmit your Dragon's Den presentation video if you've done it in June. If you do happen to be able to come along to the live event. And so, you know, you don't have to do 2 videos. On the FRR, if we have any issues on the 5th of July, we may get back to you with some feedback, but only if that's required. Down here, it mentions team interviews at the demonstration event. These aren't formal affairs. It's just the judges will be walking around the pits, talking to teams as part of the various other awards. So there's nothing formal about those. Mission scoring happens at the event. I'll go through that, and then eventually we come to the awards ceremony. So if we just move on to the next slide, please. So the flight readiness review, this is a really important stage. It's only worth 30 points, but it's essential you address all the details required here, because it's necessary for you to qualify to be allowed to fly at Buckminster. You must fill in all of the boxes and provide all the data that we've asked you for. So if we move on to the next slide. So what's included in this? The important part is a 10-minute video, or up to 10 minutes, but really, you know, give us as much as you can. And this should be a continuous flying sequence, starting with the automatic takeoff, going through some elements of controlled flight, and then back to a landing. You can show us more if you can, but that's the basic minimum that we want to be able to see. And it should be a continuous sequence, not just little clips where you've done a successful takeoff, but it didn't actually land properly, and then you've done separately a successful landing. So we want to see a continuous sequence. Now, also on the payload release, certainly in the UK, because of the restrictions on dropping things from the air, probably where you're flying, that won't be permitted. And so what we require to see is your payload release demonstrated on the ground, so that we can see that the system does work, the payload release system does work. Now, the other sort of major document you're producing with the Flight Net Readiness Review is a Form 701. Now, Rod Williams, the Chief Scrutineer, will go through the form in detail in a few minutes, but although it has sections you fill in, we need some supplementary information to support that. Now, the first of these is if you've made any significant changes since your design report to your design, we need you to explain what those changes are and why you have made those changes. So a supplementary sheet to the Form 701 explaining that in some detail. We want to see your pre-flight checklist, and so a separate document as a pre-flight checklist. If we've given you some corrective actions in our feedback to your design report, and a number of teams have received some corrective actions, we want to see a sheet explaining how you've addressed those corrective actions, and to satisfy the requirements that we've placed on you. So just please set out what the corrective action is and exactly how you've addressed it. The form asks you to confirm that your team pilot has operated the UAS, the team pilot is coming along to the event. And then finally, we want you to provide a sheet of paper signed by a chartered engineer or equivalent that specifically states that your UAS is compliant with the requirements placed for the competition, and they're usefully summarised in Annex B, that the design and build quality is satisfactory, that all the safety and airworthiness issues have been addressed, that you've tested your system, and that you're competent to operate the UAS safely. And so this should be a sheet of paper that specifically addresses all of these points and is signed off by a chartered engineer. And that should be loaded with all the rest of this up to the IMechE platform. So, yes, so if we can go on to the next slide, please. So the A0 poster, exactly how Christina has already explained it to you, so I won't go through that in detail again, but it's just, and as Paul has said, it's just, it's part of the sort of the media and engagement activity that you have of being able to show very straightforwardly exactly what you've done. And please bring it along on the 2nd of July. Oh, well, sorry, deliver it on the IMechE platform the 2nd of July and bring it along to the demonstration event. Right, the next one, Dragon's Den presentation video. Now, we're asking you this year to do a video rather than a presentation at the demonstration event, because we want to concentrate on flying at Buckminster, and we really don't have time to do individual presentations that we've done at previous years. So that's why you're doing a video, just like the virtual teams are doing, and we will be judging them alongside to give a single award for all teams on the Dragon's Den presentation. Right, on to the next slide, please. So the mission scoring, here you need to read the rules, and the rules were updated yesterday, in fact, and Christina has uploaded them onto the website. Although it doesn't change the mission scoring at all, but there are other details that have been changed. And so do read the rules carefully. The mission scoring is quite complex, but the major scores are put here, and where you get 260 points for your core mission and the potential for additional 140 points for the optional mission. They happen immediately. You do the core mission, you land, and then you'll immediately take off to do your optional mission. The overall time for the mission is 15 minutes, but the core mission is limited to 10 minutes. After you've landed for the core mission until the point that you take off for the optional mission, that time does not count towards your 15 minutes, because there may be some safety briefing being given between those 2 points, but the overall mission time is limited to 15 minutes. We're hoping that you're going to be able to do more than one attempt at the competition, and so your score will be the average of the best 2 attempts. But you need to think about that, because if you did a stunning performance on the first event, you might not want to reduce your score by going on to further attempts. This year we're introducing an appeals process, and so we're going to attempt to do as live a scoring as possible, and as soon as your scores have come up, you have up to 30 minutes to lodge an appeal if you don't like the score you're being given. But do be warned that if you lose that appeal, you will also lose 20 points from your score. Right, just very quickly going on to the awards. And so on to the next one. Yes, so just as in the virtual competition, that there's a grand champion, runner-up, third place, and a highest placed new entrant. And you can see there how the 600 points are made up. So it is the aggregate of the reports that you've delivered to us, as well as the mission and the core and optional mission scores. And on to the next slide, please. And then the additional awards, there are slightly more than possible on the virtual event, because there are scrutineering, airworthiness and operational safe supportabilities awards that are judged at the Buckminster event itself. But as Christina has already said, the design, business proposition and media engagement awards are joint with the people doing the virtual competition. So I'll now pass on to Rod Williams, who is the Chief Scrutineer.
Good morning, all. Yes, Rod Williams. I run a team of probably a dozen pretty experienced engineers who will be doing the scrutineering, where we assess how you've turned your design effectively on paper into reality, and actually have something that you're going to fly on the day. Scrutineering, we scrutinize the engineering, and we're in particular looking at the airworthiness safety aspects of your UAS. On the day, it hopefully will take about 20 minutes to scrutineer and assess your UAS prior to going airside and onto the flight line for your mission flights. What is essential is that you're prepared at this point, that you've got your aircraft ready to fly, and you're not doing any, as it says, fettling there, an old English word, but you're just doing your last minute adjustments and trying to get everything sorted. You need to have prepared your aircraft, prepared the documentation so that it's correct, and have the aircraft ready in its storage container so that we can see you set it up ready for flight. If you're not prepared and organised, it creates considerable hold-ups, and we develop a queue, a line of people trying to come through, where we're trying to stick to a fairly tight flight programme through the day. As it says there, there's 4 elements of scrutineering, and they're recorded on a Form 702, the scrutineer's checklist, which I'll show you a little bit later on, just to give you an idea of how we're assessing you. But the 4 elements for that are compliance checks, so picking out those requirements in the rules that Martin has written, that are tabulated in, I think, Annex B. We'll then do a detailed airworthiness inspection, so we'll be physically looking into the aircraft itself, and then you'll head towards the airside, towards the flight line, and we'll do some functional controls checks, so that the aircraft is operating effectively on the ground before you go on to fly it. And the 4th element of that is for the scrutineer's prize that we assess through this process. Next slide, please. So phase 1 of the phase 1 of the scrutineering that we mentioned is the safety and specification compliance checks. Lambert mentioned the Form 701, which is critical here, but it really, we want it for you to use as preparation, as almost as a checklist when you come to bring your aircraft to us. We also need the supporting documentation that goes with that. Now, that might be electronically. We're happy that's shown on your tablet or laptop or whatever, and that includes things like insurance documentation and your BMFA membership. At that point, we will also be weighing your aircraft to check that you're under the 10 kilogram limit, all up mass, and we'll be looking at the aircraft for aspects like the visibility of the batteries and the aircraft surfaces, so that should it land somewhere that's not expected, it's much more easily found. The second stage is our airworthiness checks. This is where we're looking at the integrity, the engineering integrity of your unmanned aircraft. Structural integrity, propulsion integrity, and systems integrity. So effectively the mechanical, the propulsion, and the avionics elements, really. That things are robust and secure, that you've got adequate power in your motors, and that the various components, systems that you have on board are integrated securely and well, don't interfere with each other, and are protected from the environment. As Yelena said, we could have quite temperamental weather, even though it's the height of summer. So we're looking to make sure you've thought about environmental protection. Could you go to the next slide? These are kind of the things that we're looking to pick up. On the mechanical side, on the left, we're looking to see that bolts and fasteners are in safety. That means you've got more than 1.5 threads showing through, and that you've got a secondary means of security. And there's some examples there, but it could be a bit of araldite or lock washers and lock nuts. And one of the very good ways of showing that you've got that integrity is to have a torque seal, torque strike across the nuts on a bolt, and you can see if the locking nut has vibrated loose, because the torque strike line is no longer a single line. And as to the wiring, we need that to be nice and tidy. It's not going to interfere with control runs. You're not going to have what is known in the Royal Navy as a snake's wedding, with lots of bits of cabling hanging around. So they should be tidied up and secured, so they're out of the way. And we're looking to see that you haven't got problems with ventilation and insulation, and that your wiring is well soldered, and that if you've got any splices or joins, they are correctly put together. Next slide, please. So phase 3, you then bring, you will have got, at this point, you'll have got a red sticker. If you look at the root of the starboard wing in that picture, there's 3 stickers, a red, yellow and a green sticker, and you'll get the red sticker first when you've got through those initial scrutineering checks, and you'll then go just to airside to do the power on, power off, the functional controls, so sense and direction when you activate through your control box, that the ailerons and the rudders will work in the right way. We'll check your payload release mechanism on the ground, and there are some rules and guidance on that in the rules. And we'll check that your flight termination system works correctly, and would bring the aircraft in the shortest possible time effectively to the ground. And what we'll do at that point is also do your timed assembly process. So you'll bring your UA out of your storage box and go through those pre-flight checks, and we'll get a time for that. One more click, please. At the end of that phase, you should be awarded the yellow sticker to say that you're ready and good to go. You've been through all the scrutineering and pre-flight checks. Next slide, please. This being aviation, airworthiness is critical, and what we want is to have a good audit trail, as you would in any operation of aircraft. And we adopt a thing called the F700. We've stolen from the British military because that's where my background comes from. And there are 3 key documents that you'll find in there. And if we click to the next slide, the S701, which Lambert mentioned earlier, this is the Flight Readiness Review Certificate that you'll have submitted, and it effectively acts as a checklist for you and for us then to verify that that you've got everything you need in preparation for the event. The guidance down the right-hand side says if you need to add any additional documentation, as Lambert mentioned, that you need to bring along, but it gives us a good checklist to go through, gives you the opportunity to put down those details. If you could click again, and on the back page, we'd ask you to put some pictures, and if you could crop them to fit the boxes, please, that would be great. But it gives us those details so that we can see that you've got compliant systems fitted to your aircraft. And next click, please. And on the third page of it, there's actually some additional guidance, which hopefully brings out the details you need for preparation for this, your flight test video, and other elements and documentation that you might need to bring along. Next slide, please. The Form 702, this is the scrutineer's checklist, so you won't retain this document, but I've just put it in to show you the things that we're checking for. At the top, you've got the compliance checks and the airworthiness inspection checks and the pre-flight functional and control checks. And those are pass-fail checks. So if you fail, you will not proceed. But they're there, compliance with the rules and for safety. Then the lower half of it is the scrutineer's prize assessment, and you can see what we're looking for in terms of design and build quality, the airworthiness, integrity elements of it, and then your safe systems of work, which, as Lambert mentioned, we may well be talking with you in your pit lane to find out details of how you operate, how you check your safety, what you do to modify the aircraft and the like. And at the bottom, there's then a signature from my team, which recommends that you get a permit to fly, that you can go to the flight line and fly your mission. Pardon me. The right-hand sheet is just our notes page on the back page, so that we've got, again, for us, a bit of an audit trail to see how we've assessed you. The final sheet, with another click, please, is the Form 705, which is the aircraft release to flight certificate. And as you can see, that proceeds down through those 19 phases where we sign off the phases as you've gone through them, through the flight readiness review, scrutineering, pre-flight checks, and on to the flight safety officer. And then finally, how you close down the aircraft. And if you see in the column to the right of the middle, there is a column where you're going to have to sign for your team. You put your signature and your name in capitals, and we will sign off then against that. The first, second signature process that's very standard through aviation. And you can see where we're going to put the stickers on your aircraft at each phase as we award that through the scrutineering checks, the functional checks, and then the flight safety officer granting you a permit to fly. Okay, so really the summary details of what we've got here, which we'll pick up in the scrutineer's prize, as I've mentioned, the design quality, and we're looking at how easy that UA that you've developed is to inspect, maintain and transport. Airworthiness and integrity, again, we'll pick that up, as I said, from the inspections, and then the safety elements. How do you ensure your safety, quality, your configuration management? Do you have processes that you you use as a team to do those things? And really the summary piece, it is key that you're prepared for this, that we can get you through scrutineering efficiently. Some teams have been quite phenomenal, others have taken all day. You need to check you've got your documentation correct. Practice how you put your UA together from taking it out of the storage box. Again, you will be timed. Lambert mentioned earlier having some reference cards. We've got the Spitfire flight reference cards as an example there. Having those procedures, they may be held on your laptop rather than necessarily hard copy. And that you've got your integrity correct. Structure is robust. The fasteners are safe and secure, and that your wiring is tidied away and not going to catch on anything. And as a helpful piece, one more click, please. We've got a couple of guides on the Google Drive to help you that will give you those little top tips for producing the finest unmanned aircraft you can. So that takes you through scrutineering, and I shall now hand you over to the Flight Safety Officer, Chris Bradbury.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Chris. I'm your Flight Safety Officer. So basically, I'm responsible for ensuring that your aircraft don't join the revolution against mankind and start Skynet all over again. So by the time you reach to me, you should have had your red and orange stickers applied to the aircraft and essentially be ready to fly. So when you come out, the last thing I'll do is make sure that you've got your waypoints programmed and set up properly, and then issue your green sticker and sign off the last of the 705. The important thing to know is that you cannot come onto the runway without permission. So the air side is basically the danger areas where all the aircraft are going to be flying. So we don't want people walking around unduly. So access to airside will be controlled. Once you come onto the airside, the first thing you'll get from me is a quick briefing of what you can and can't do. And then, like I say, I'll be checking your waypoints. The important thing is the 7 Ps. Pretty poor planning promotes pretty poor performance. When you come out to the flight line, obviously there's only going to be 3 of you from your team. So you need to make sure that you know what you're doing. So one person is going to need to show me your waypoints. One person is going to need to go through the aircraft controls with the safety pilot to make sure they know what they're going to be doing, and obviously checking over your aircraft and making sure it's ready. So essentially when you come out, I'll give you a quick briefing, 5 minutes to set up your aircraft, then you get your 15 minutes of flying time. Now, insurance is important when it comes to flying at the event. The safety pilots will be the ones who are insured. But if we can move on to the next slide, please, Christina. The insurance that you need in advance is for your own test flying. So if you're considering doing any demonstration or test flying prior to the competition, I'm obviously referring to UK teams here. International teams, you'll need to refer to your own international laws, I'm afraid. You'll be flying up to 10 kilos in what is called the A3 open category of CAP 722. Now, in that CAP 722, it does specify that the dropping of articles is not permitted. So that means it's illegal to drop a payload. But before anyone panics, you can drop payloads in Article 16, which is an exemption given to model flyers who are members of the British Model Flying Association, Scottish Aircraft Association, Large Model Association, or First Person View UK members. If you are a member of one of those groups, that will give you insurance to fly. The important thing to bear in mind is that the entire flight from start to finish will need to be done under Article 16. The benefit of Article 16 is it does allow you to fly in more places and more locations than the A3 open category. The full Article 16 can be downloaded from various places on the internet. If you Google, for example, British Model Flying Association and Article 16, they have a whole website dedicated to the rules and regulations of that. So important thing is, like I say, if you're going to be flying and practicing your flying, fly safely, fly legally, make sure you know the laws, make sure you have insurance in place. And when it comes through to the competition, just make sure you're ready when you come out on that runway and that you're all prepared and planned. That's it from me. I think we're now on to general questions, I believe for the live side of the competition. That's still a virtual question there, isn't it?
Yeah, we have quite a few questions, some which Christina has kindly answered along the way.
Have you found some? I think there's a few earlier on that was sort of, there's a scrutineering one, Rod, earlier on as well.
Scrutineering one, yeah, about Loctite. Yes, happy with Loctite. Again, it's the visibility of that as a secondary means that we can see. It's effectively like a torque seal, torque strike. So we need to be assured that we can see where you've put the Loctite in. But yes, if you've Loctited the threads, you need to point that out for us.
There's a question about scrutinizing software earlier on from David Gladwell, we don't scrutinise the software per se, do we? That is not done because that is not a part of the other process. Certainly, does it, Rod? That doesn't work that way.
Correct. So obviously you'll have some fairly standard software packages on board, you know, the likes of Pilot or whatever, but you will have to put your details into that. We will want to talk through how that process works for your flight termination system, for instance. That will be part of the process.
There's a question there. How do the launching mechanisms such as trolleys or catapults count towards the maximum takeoff weight? Unless they're actually flying with the aircraft, they're not part of the takeoff weight. So in terms of the competition rules, there's possibly something else in terms of your box weight, for example, but it's not a flying weight.
I think I maybe confused the issue about the flight test video about the dropping of payload, because Chris explained about Article 16. I think really, if you can't meet the requirements in the UK of Article 16 for whatever reason, then we will accept a ground drop of the payload as to demonstrate that you can drop it, rather than exactly what I said earlier, which rather conflicted with what Chris said as clarification.
Thanks, Lambert. Yes, exactly. Yeah, we are, again, we'll be able to want to see your mechanism operating in that case, you know, which to show that it does indeed work, and we'll visualize it in the air if you can't meet those articles. Again, it's important that you don't, whatever you do, we're talking about UK particularly here, you know, you don't go break the law, right? That's really important. So follow the regulations, follow the rules. That's really, really important that we do that. Again, those overseas teams, and there's a lot here, I'm afraid, please refer to your own rules to how that works. And again, although to be fair, regulations tend to be converging. So in most cases, you tend to see pretty similar regulations nowadays. Another question for David. Probably for you, Chris.
When the UAS lands after the core mission, can we manually move it around before it takes off again? Some of the aircraft, obviously, they're going to be dolly launched or they're going to be catapult launched, for example. So the answer to that is yes. In terms of flight safety, once the aircraft has landed, as flight safety officer, I'll give you permission to go and retrieve once you can demonstrate the aircraft's been made safe, you know, and it's not fully armed, for example, and not a safety risk.
Clearly, if that land occurs not in the intended landing space, but somewhere into the distance, then that's a different conversation. Chris owns the space. He will control everybody in and out of that, so nobody moves without Chris's authority, basically. In most cases, that landing, I would argue, is more like a controlled crash. Probably would then would do some recovery actions, which we are quite used to doing at this competition. With 2 flight lines, we're hoping obviously to reduce, minimise stoppages of flying, but again, we need to be safe for people out recovering items, and again, that will be something that we'll be keeping an eye on. But Chris covers all of that aspects, and again, he will decide when things fly or not. Depending on where the unexpected arrival occurs, depends on whether we can send people out while another flight's going on, or whether we have to suspend flying, for example. Coming back to the 7 Ps that I mentioned earlier about planning and making sure that you're ready to fly. If you come out and you're not ready to fly within 5 minutes, there is the risk that we actually push you back into the queue. So that's another important reason to make sure that when you come out, you're fully prepared to take off and get going. Cool. So the question here around mandatory about both competitions. So first of all, it's not mandatory to compete in both competitions. What we have said, and I'm talking particularly the UK-based teams, we've already asked you to make your choice. Because for a number of reasons around ability to plan, and also again with various restrictions going on, so those in the UK you have made your choices, and that is something we are going to hold you to. The conversation that we talked about for those overseas teams is we understand that literally the colours are changing by the day on COVID, and therefore the inability for a team who wanted to come to a live event overseas being stopped is not your fault. It's the system's fault, be it the UK or your nation's rules. So that's why we've said you know, those teams, we are content for you to move across to the virtual competition, and therefore strongly recommend, and as Christina mentioned, is that you follow the timelines in the virtual competition in order to allow us to do that, because the virtual competition will be run on the dates we've said. But for those overseas teams where we know understand it's not your fault, you know, that you're unable to attend, even though you wanted to and probably were ready to, then you know, that's why we're doing it for this in this case. Rather hoping that from now onwards and future years this will not be an issue, but let's see. Do you want anything to that, Yelena? I think that covers that.
No, I think that's everything we had to say.
Cool, thank you.
Actually, Paul, can I add a few things to
yeah,
that?
please do correct me now.
No, it's just I know that international teams have been contacting me regarding this, and there is a bit of confusion. What I wanted to say that those international teams who opted to come to the live event, we understand that because of COVID there might be restrictions. You might be asked to actually isolate for a couple of weeks on arrival to UK, which is not great. It is a lot of implications if you guys come to UK in July, if there's still restrictions then. So what we've proposed is that you compete in both virtual and live competition. This way you have a space in the virtual competition in case you cannot make it to the live competition, if that makes sense. So it's obviously your choice. If you decide not to go for the virtual competition and take the risk and just do the live competition, that's fine. But there is a significant risk that you may not be able to travel in July to UK. So if that's the risk you want to take, that's fine. If you don't want to take the risk, then you participate in the virtual competition as well. That's it.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Christina. Again, we're conscious that this is I've just said challenging, difficult, interesting year, and again, regulations certainly in the UK are changing, and we won't know till May, and then middle of May, and then till 21st of June, and probably even after that exactly where we are. And I know there's a constant review every 2 weeks of we're using a traffic light system for other overseas countries. We will literally not know, so that's why we recommend strongly that those teams do that. There's a next question about radio meets regulations from David. And if you're Christy, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, what radio you're referring to, whether it's the transmitter for the aircraft, if it's the FPV telemetry and so forth. The full list of available frequencies for the UK is downloadable from Ofcom. But as a rough guide, 2.4 gigahertz, you're allowed up to 10 milliwatts, unless it's channel hopping, in which case you're allowed 100 milliwatts, and 5.8 is 25 milliwatts. So yeah, it just depends really on what frequency you're planning on running.
Yes, that's all laid out in the rules. I forget which section, but it's clearly stated in the rules what radios and power requirements are permitted.
Yeah.
And I should probably, I should have said it at the beginning, but I'll say at this point, there's a significant amount of information in the rules, so please read the rules, because quite often that's where we find that quite often the question you had or were unsure about is covered. As Martin has mentioned, we've been developing these rules over many years now, honing them as questions have come in. So they are pretty good, you know, they're very good detail now of those sort of aspects that most people tend to cover. But again, every year we find people have new and interesting ways of asking questions. But please read the rules, and I think you'll be surprised just how much information is in there. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Martin.
And it's also summarised on the F701, so it gets your cross-check in as you complete that form.
Comes off of mute. Okay. Thanks, Christina. Just for that clarification. I'm just going to give it another minute or so. Comes with slightly over time by a couple of minutes. Okay. So I think we'll call it call a stop there. As I said, this will be uploaded and available through the net on our site afterwards. So again, you can listen back. There's again, conscious the amount of information that's come both on the virtual and on the live event. So please listen back there. There's a lot of information. We are here to help. We're more than happy to answer your questions after you've read the rules. To do that, and obviously as we get closer to the event, I suspect as people may have issues, please come back. We'll probably almost end up with a frequently asked questions thing. I suspect certainly on the virtual, this is the first year we've done that. I suspect we'll probably have a bunch of advice and guidance as things come out. So great. So if there's no more questions, thank you for time attending. Good to see so many people join, and virtually or live. Looking forward to seeing you over the coming weeks. Thanks team. Thanks everybody. Thank you very much indeed.